Hey,
Howdy.
how you doing, man?
Doing great. How about yourself?
I'm. I have health issues I've been dealing with a little bit today, but other than that, I'm peachy.
I'm sorry. I took a giant shit right before stream, so I don't know if that's on the same level, but I sympathize.
It means we were shitting together. 'Cause I
Oh
also
no, wait. It's not food poisoning, is it?
no.
Okay.
It's a chronic illness.
Gotcha. Well, I love you, and I hope that it doesn't bother you much from this point forward. Not that I have any
Well,
power over that. Apart from that, how you doing?
I'm here. I'm present. Oh, you can't see me, can you?
No, you can. Would you like to be on video, or would you? Gotcha.
I
Cool. I'll
I
put you on.
usually prefer it, but
All right, 1 second, then I'll throw you on. Doo-doo-doo.
are we already live?
Oh, my apologies. Yes, I should have clarified that. We are currently live. There are folks watching,
Cool.
and I will get your video up right away.
Sweet. So does everyone know we were dumping together? Because I hope so.
Yeah, yes, they all do, and they're all happy to hear it too. Here, hold on. All right, sorry. I'm still a little bit of a boomer, but I'll get this working eventually. Yeah. That aside, I appreciate you coming to talk with me.
Yeah, hell yeah. I think we were both getting bombarded with requests to talk together at about the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there we go. Almost got you fitted. Hold on. Almost. We're so close.
I almost fit.
Almost. And we've done it. Go team. Absolutely. There we go. All right.
Welcome to Denver, everybody.
Wait, is that that's a real background, right? That's not a
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
That's actually really nice.
I put this neutral density film from my photography days. I put it over it because otherwise it's too bright. You can't see anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like putting sunglasses on a window.
Nice. It looks really. I mean, I've just got like the teal wall behind, not teal, the mint green wall behind me. That's a phenomenal background. You said Denver?
Yeah. That's Denver skyline in the background.
I don't know much about Denver. Is there anything particularly interesting about that city that you should tell me about?
So I've been all over the place. So I've lived in
Denver
New York.
Right now.
What's that?
Googling Denver right now.
Oh yeah. So I've lived in New York. I've lived in Florida. I've lived in Louisiana, and I've lived in Wyoming. And there's something that's great about big cities, and there's something that's great about living out in the country. Mm-hmm. And I like that living here, I can be in either or. Over the course of, if I go that direction, I'm in the city. If I go the other direction, I'm in the wilderness.
Gotcha. Oh, that's like 15, so 20 cute.
Minutes.
I live in Seattle. Denver and Seattle are right next to each other in most populous cities in the United States, with Seattle at 18th and Denver at 19th. We're like sibling cities, kind of, a little bit.
At one point, too, I think we were number 4 and 5 as far as most secular cities go.
Well, that would be pertinent to your channel's goals, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I care far less about whether people are atheists as I care about if they're humanists. Mm-hmm. And so I get along with a lot of theists as long as they have a sort of humanism that comes first.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think I can agree with that. It's also just as a matter of pragmatism, getting people off of mysticism entirely is a little bit impractical. It's not an easy argument to take. Whereas getting people to sort of prioritize ethically certain systems, I think, is a much, much easier task. But you would know more about than me. Your channel focuses a lot more on the atheist bit than I do. I'm an atheist as well, but I try not to talk about it too much because I find that it splits a lot of hairs in the politics community.
Yeah, it definitely can. I kind of backed off, but not completely. And so for the longest time, my channel was called Mr. Atheist. The show was called Dear Mr. Atheist. And now my channel is called Jimmy Snow because, one, I wanted to do a broader range of content. But two, there were so many people that were like, I would subscribe to your channel, but if my mom sees that I'm subscribed to Mr. Atheist, I'll be in trouble.
It's ironic, you know?
Yeah. So there was a little bit of a back off there for that reason. Also, like in just trying to do things, there would be times where there would be a barrier of like, I'd love to do a collab, but I can't collab with somebody called Mr. Atheist. That kind of stuff was happening.
Gotcha. Happy to meet a fellow controversial YouTuber. Um, those aren't the reasons I've been precluded from speaking to others, but we all have our reasons, right? Yeah, I mean, from a marketing standpoint, also, I think, at least just from my experience, seeing how people push like political agendas, I think moving to a more neutral channel title probably helps lower people's guards a little bit as well. You know, like if a person,
Yeah.
is very deeply faithful and they come to the channel, Mr. Atheist, the secular destroyer, with their two giant arms, logic and
Right.
reason, they might be a little bit on guard with the arguments.
Right. Yeah. I was gonna go with screw you, theist scum, but I decided to go to just Jimmy Snow in the end.
Works.
Yeah. Yeah, and really, so it's interesting too because I started watching a little bit of your stuff after we first started talking, and I've noticed that you are aware of the biggest problem that I was aware of when I started on YouTube, and that's the old YouTube skeptic community is a bunch of trash. It's a bunch of hot flaming garbage. And so my whole goal with my channel was like, hey, what if we had a channel that didn't only appeal to like white dudes who left religion but still want to be just as racist or misogynistic or sexist or transphobic or queerphobic in general? And that was the appeal of my channel. So it was funny because I talked to some of those older creators when I started, and they were like, yeah, your demographics will never go above like 10% female. But mine's sitting at 75%. So I like to think we're doing a good job at finding new audiences.
Wow, that's insane. Holy shit. I thought I was because I do like the edgy online debate bro stuff, which is and that is, I think, one of the most male driven communities on YouTube, and I think I'm sitting at like 16% female, and I was riding high with that one, but Jesus Christ.
I was as shocked as anybody else because I also look like this. So I was
whoa! Nothing about how you looks would deny you the grace of a female audience. Now,
by the way, let me just say I like your style as well. The beard, the long hair. There's just something about it I like.
I need a haircut about 4 months ago, but I appreciate the sentiment. I completely agree when it comes to the skeptic community. I feel like the skeptic community got this completely undeserved sense of entitlement after they accomplished the Herculean task of pointing out that it's not particularly rational to believe in any given deity. So once they have accomplished that, they think they're king of the world, and then they go on to replicate essentially every terrible mannerism that was essential to the previous, religious neocon order they were arguing against. And they've essentially replaced. And we saw the same thing with the fucking new atheist crowd as well. With the oh man, I always butcher these names and I forget who's good and who's bad. But you know what I mean with like Dawkins and Hitchens and stuff like that, where you have
Hitchens we get to keep like.
I think
Hitchens one of those people where I'm so glad he's dead because I can mostly like him.
Mm-hmm. But if he was like around today, he might be like, well, logically, chromosomes are the determinant of, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Dawkins is a brilliant biologist, but when it comes to social issues, he can be basically what happened with the skeptic community was they were like, no God, no God. Here's my video about no God. Here's my responding to a guy on a motorcycle about why there is a God. Here's my Josh Feuerstein response. Okay, but also anybody who cares about any minority is a monster. Like that was the kind of stuff you were getting. It was like, wait, why did the entire skeptic community become an anti-SJW
like
community?
That.
And why was that all their content?
I'm here to fight against the dogma of the religious right and the dogma of social justice. And then in like the course of two, because like a lot of these skeptics now are like far right. They're not just anti-SJW now. They have like completely, a lot of them are ethno-nationalists, which, so whatever, and what it makes me feel is they were never actually that committed to the atheism thing. It was just getting like an intellect, like an intellectual crowbar that they could use to jam into the current discourse that made them feel very, very intelligent at the time. And then it was just that sense of intelligence and kind of like, pat yourself on the back, self-congratulation that they were able to write off of.
is the phrase
the
I usually use.
breaking your arm off, jerking yourself off. And then once you have that sense, like there's nothing to stop you from just going whatever fucking direction you want.
Yeah.
Nobody's because you don't accept criticism anymore. You don't meaningfully like introspect. I wanted to ask you, by the way, because I didn't like you. I had heard about you, of course, since I started my channel, or at least shortly thereafter. But I started looking to you more recently. When did you start your channel again?
2.5 years-ish ago.
Yeah, you are insanely big for 2.5 years of being on YouTube.
My shit-eating grin there was about how anytime I hear anything I can turn into a sex joke, I'm inclined to, but this is my first time here, so I'm trying to be polite. You said you were insanely big and you left a pause, and that was the... Anyway, go ahead.
No, we have a very chaste audience here. I appreciate your restraint. No, you've grown quite large quite quickly, and it's really impressive. And I guess I thought it was really cool while looking through your content, because I didn't think there was room online for like a new, better skeptic experience. I felt like almost like the internet had been burnt out in it, you know? Like we had the wave of skeptics, it fucking failed, and now we're just gonna kind of limp on from that point, you know?
I felt that way when I started also, and there was definitely a big part of me that was like, what am I adding? Because the whole thing I started was Dear Mr. Atheist, where every Thursday we answer the questions atheists are asked over and over and over again, which is only like 20 questions, so that's only 20 weeks of content. And then I started like branching out and doing this other stuff. And what I discovered was, yes, it's been done to death for one audience. And that's mostly white wieners. So I started doing a show that wasn't for just white wieners. And now it's, as far as like the atheist content goes, that's like an explicitly atheist channel. I'm not aware of, and I'm not saying this to be braggy, because I also hate my own channel and think about deleting it frequently, but I'm not aware of a channel that does more daily views in the explicitly atheist sphere right now. And that's all because I didn't go for white wieners.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Right? Well, that's what they complain about, right? It's like when video game companies make their shooty game roster a little more diverse, you know, and they talk about it like this marketing decision was made by, you know, like Russian agents who have infiltrated the social justice sphere to disseminate Marxism, when in reality it's business execs who recognize that if you're only catering to white dudes, that's like 32% of the population of America and like 6.5% of the global population. You're missing out on a couple of people there, you know, a few groups, perhaps.
The thing I'm thinking of, though, as you're describing it, is the number of times I've been called a snowflake by somebody who screamed and overreacted to the next Thor having tits. Like, that's...
Well, the anti-SJW crowd is, I think, kind of burnt out at this point. I remember when I started my channel, because I'm pretty far left. I think I'm conceivably farther to the left than you, at least when it comes to economic policies. And when I first started this channel, what I thought was like, wow, the online left, it really didn't do a good job responding to like Gamergate and like the rise of the skeptic community. We didn't really respond to that well. So what I'm going to do with my channel is I'm going to be, you know, aggressive and sort of presentatively masculine insofar as it helps them take me a little bit more seriously for all the good that's done. And what I've found is they are just empty shells. The content creators and the fans, they're repeating talking points from 2015. It's the exact same. Nothing has changed.
Yeah.
At all.
Because there was no challenges.
Yeah, they never had to grow. Yeah. So now it's 2020 and the quartering is still making videos about how if a short is made slightly less skirt, it's the SJWs taking over gaming. People are still using big red in their YouTube thumbnails. Like nothing has changed. We're in the exact same or they at least are in the same cultural space they were 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's it hasn't gotten more interesting, which is the funny thing is it's had a double-sided reaction for me, because on the one hand, there are people who like I will make reactions to, and I'll be explaining to people why their arguments are wrong. And maybe for the first time, people are hearing those things. And that's been happening in some of more of my political videos lately. But I also will describe like, and by the way, this person might have a lot of charisma. They might be excited. They might be talking to the camera. and they are the most exciting, boring person I have fucking ever heard, because they're just reciting these same talking points with no challenge, with no backup. But the strange thing that has happened is that I've had this channel that's grown well, that has a good receptive audience. But as far as atheist commentators or political commentators or somebody that gets posted to BreadTube, but I'm not even sure that they would consider me BreadTube. I am reacted to from other channels almost not at all. Like the number of reaction videos and reply videos are super duper low despite all those other numbers. So that was another thing that interests me, is like, hey, challenges to these things do exist. Here they are, and nobody has wanted to take them on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know if, in a sense, I envy you, because I am very aggressively responded to from both sides of the aisle. But
I've seen a little of that.
Yeah, maybe perhaps a little bit. Probably, yeah, like first search results if you Google my name type stuff. But with yeah, with regards to responses to your content, I don't know. I mean, it could just be that you've because your audience is not that same demographic of like the white guy. It's not as worth it to try and pick people from your audience, you know? That they know, they recognize they're fighting over the same fraction of a percent of YouTube's demographic. You have politically interested people, and then you have them white men, and then you have to have them kind of like in the interstice between anti-SJW and progressive, where they can be fought over. And that's a small community, and they're constantly waging wars over it. And if you've diversified beyond their reach, then you're fucking untouchable, my dude. You're invincible.
It's I wish they would engage more, because I like things that work in the algorithm, but it's almost a mistake for them not to, because what few times my audience and I have tried to step out of just what we're doing in YouTube and do a little something, we've done a little fucking something. And this is weird, because I feel like I'm doing a brag fest and I never speak nicely about myself, but these people who aren't responding, like we got a trans woman released from prison after something like 9 months in Egypt, who was being there held as a political prisoner.
Holy shit.
And then I think we also ruined Tommy McMurtry's life, which is something I take huge. I don't know if you've got a Google in front of you, but type in Tommy McMurtry and tell me what kind of autocompletes you're given. McMurtry is McMurtry.
Atomic McMurtry, pumpkins. Atomic McMurtry is sexually attracted to pumpkins.
Yeah.
Atomic McMurtry wife. I am confused. I will admit. Will you fill in the gaps for me, would you? My brain's not doing the connective tissue for me.
So, have you ever heard of the New Independent Fundamentalist Baptists, specifically led by Steven Anderson?
I have not, no.
So they are this Baptist cult, essentially, that is growing pretty rapidly. And the head of their church is this guy, Steven Anderson. You've definitely seen memes of him, and you've probably seen videos of him talking about if he could push a button to kill every queer, he would.
Okay, I remember that. I recognize that.
So they, a couple years ago, or I guess it was last year, everything feels like forever ago now, but last year they did this Make America Straight Again conference at the in Orlando to basically celebrate the Pulse nightclub shooting.
Nice.
And this guy, so I make a response to their ad for it. And this guy, Tommy McMurtry, does a sermon responding to me. And in it, he says he doesn't want to name who I am, because he doesn't want to give any more. Yeah, that's the perfect still to leave it on, by the way. He doesn't want to give me any more exposure. So he decided to just call me Mr. Pumpkin. First of all, let me say to Tommy, thank you for the merchandising opportunity. I've made buttloads. Thank you. But so then we did this. He was doing this shit, and I decided in response to be like, let me teach you a lesson about exposure. And with my audience, we did certain things on purpose to make sure that the search engine optimization, if you look for Tommy McMurtry's name, you get is sexually attracted to pumpkins as the top result. And that's been more than a year that it's held there. Also, if you go to TommyMcMurtry.com, which is in no way affiliated with Tommy McMurtry or the New Independent Fundamentalist Baptist, you will find several pages of very sexy pumpkinoid beings. It's so it was basically our little fun way of fight. Now here's the so far conclusion of the story that actually boggles my mind. Because first they do their conference, they decide to do a call-in portion. So of course, Tommy's just getting call after call of people asking if he's sexually attracted to pumpkins.
Mm-hmm.
And then this year, they're doing Make America Straight Again 2. They're doing a second conference, and it's a 4-day conference. And so not only is it a 4-day conference at this one time of the year, you have 4 different days to choose from. Now, let me ask you, Vosh, if last year somebody associated your name more with being sexually attracted to pumpkins than Jesus Christ, who you're claiming to advocate for, what is the one day you would not do a follow-up conference on?
Probably not Halloween.
And that's the day he's presenting. They have their conference over 4 days. In the middle is Halloween, and he's presenting on Halloween. So stupid.
He might be outflanking you from the pumpkin side. It could be that at that conference he will actually fuck a pumpkin and he will own it, and then he will get the merchandising opportunities. It could he might be taking you, from the front, if you know what I mean.
That could be. If that happens, I will respectfully, if he fucks a pumpkin at his anti-queer conference, I'll give him my channel.
Yeah, there are girl pumpkins, I assume.
I don't know how that works.
I'm happy to hear that. I'll look more into that. I'll investigate the details of this particular engagement after I'm done with this stream. Because now that it has been laid out to me in full, I think I had some recollection of hearing about this back when it was actually taking place, but I'd do for a refresher. Have you?
Sure.
Do you? So now that I assume back then you were Mr. Atheist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now that you're Jimmy Snow, are you interested in continuing this campaign of terror, or are you more interested in sort of laying the skeptic stuff a little bit to bear and pursuing more political content? Because I looked through your recent videos, there's a lot of more overtly political stuff there.
So part 2 of the Pumpkin Saga is definitely coming.
Okay, good.
There was a time where we almost started again, and basically when we did the first time around, we did it, but we were doing it on our heels, and there were things that couldn't happen because they were able to save some things right at the last minute. And so we want to make sure when we hit next time, it's devastating. Like, we got some of their channels knocked out because they were saying like overtly violent things, but more importantly, we got some of their income sources, their main income sources, completely cut off. And that took them time to recover from. I want part 2 to not just be like a refresher, like, hey, let's go and make fun of Tommy again. I want to make them like hate me. I want them to. One of them has already tried to locate me in the past, and the fact that it was only one offends me. So next time we'll do more. Becoming Jimmy Snow was so I could get into that more broad stuff. Yes, there's more political stuff. However, it's more political response stuff. So, for example, people watching here who might be like, oh, if they're trying to go and look for like the video you did the other day about whether or not Marx and Lenin would vote for Biden. I don't make that kind of content.
That was the most that was a departure from my traditional content as well. That was
okay.
I had to read for that one. Whew, that took a lot out of me.
I came from a cult. I came from a religious fundamentalist world that affects your politics and that affects your sort of daily ideology or personal philosophy. And so anything that is contrary to that is the kind of stuff that I go for. So you're not going to find me doing a lot of responses to even moderate Republicans or Romney level Republicans, but people who push further right than that, who clearly their personal philosophy and political philosophies are too intertwined in harmful ways. That's the kind of stuff. So gotcha. Yes, there's been the political stuff. My next episode is literally just reading other people's stories of being slut shamed. So it's a broad range of stuff.
Do you have you talked about QAnon yet?
No, I'm fascinated with QAnon, and I've done. I've seen the John Oliver episode, and then done some level of research beyond that because my old roommate's mother is a member. So I've basically learned enough to make fun of her.
It's It's pretty spooky, to be perfectly honest. It's fairly spooky. We have people in government now who are openly QAnon affiliated. Yeah. And it's essentially it's basically the Satanic Panic again, where they feel that there are elements of communist elements of government that are fighting against our patriots who are trying to disseminate Satanism and pedophilia and so on and so forth. Having spoken to a few QAnon aligned people myself, I genuinely believe these people are more lost than any religious sort of zealots that I've spoken to in the past, and that is deeply, deeply disturbing.
I think they are. It's really funny because QAnon's generation seems to be mostly boomers and the next generation down. Obviously, there's some alt-right people who jump in there too, so maybe some older millennials, but you don't see a ton of it in the millennial generation or the ones that follow. But we were told, like, we're the everyone gets a trophy generation, and that's what's wrong with us. Meanwhile, when you look at the personalities of the people from QAnon, clearly the confidence that they were instilled is not proportionate to their ability. It's literally like, they're told they are brilliant and so smart and so capable of, their opinion of themselves is extremely high, where their actual abilities are extremely low. So they use words like, do your own research, when they don't even know what the phrase research actually means, because they think Googling for something they suspect and finding someone who agrees with them is research, and that's the extent of their research.
Yeah, the entitled Zoomer meme is a pretty old one. I mean, it's been going on for like 20 or 30 years. I mean, it's probably been going on forever. But it has really, really been, present over the past 20 years. But I have never, in a young person, seen anything even approximating the level of entitlement displayed by your average QAnon Twitter user. Not even fucking close. The confidence with which they will dismiss evidence and research, the bravado with which they will post their dumb fuck opinions online, the confidence unearned is insane. Nothing compares to it,
Right, and I'm not saying that there isn't traditional entitlement in some young people, but when you're talking about what generationally defines our entitlement, the things they usually complain about are on par with basically, oh, you feel so entitled because you don't feel like you owe me your time. You don't feel like you owe me explanations. You don't feel like you, they think to be entitled is to not feel like you owe the previous generation anything. Whereas their entitlement was, you have to actively give us stuff. We're going to take it all, then ruin it for your generation and ask you how come you can't get ahead the way we did.
Yeah, and if you're looking at an institutional level as well, right now our country is buckling under pressure that we haven't seen for 150 years because a very, very, very small demographic of wealthy white people have decided that they're entitled to a state of socioeconomic affairs where the rest of the country is split open against, the increasing internal conflicts of capitalism, unrestrained by any sort of government intervention. So they can continue to make such and such money. I don't think nothing even comes close to the entitlement of white women in the suburbs, or not white women, white men, whatever, white people in the suburbs who will fall asleep clutching their guns because they know that 60 miles away there's a group of black people protesting for their rights. Nothing even comes close to that. That's another fucking universe of entitlement right there.
Then you see that couple show up at the Republican National Convention, which was this sort of thing where I was like, there's not even enough time for you guys to vet that these people aren't going to get up and start with the craziest conspiracies of Daffy Duck is coming to make you have an abortion or something kind of level of just wacky crap. And they're putting them up there. Then you have the shootings yesterday, and Tucker Carlson has the audacity to come up and go, what do you expect? This is going on. Wouldn't we expect that to happen? So he understands the concept when a white person feels afraid that they're going to lash out violently, and yet he can't understand after centuries of racial oppression that there would be protests.
Oh, well, they know. They absolutely know. I'm very much of the opinion that the privilege of being sincere in your, belief that there's no systemic oppression to fight against, that privilege is relegated to us, to the working class, or I guess to the YouTube class, which is its own thing. But when it comes, with those people, I'm very confident they know exactly what the fuck they're doing. Tucker Carlson describing a kid who illegally possessed a firearm, carried it across state lines in a state that doesn't have a stand your ground defense law, killed 2 people, injured 1, and then fled the scene and only turned himself into the police later, described that incident and that child as upholding law and order is such an insane Orwellian departure from the actual meaning of any of those words that he knows what the fuck he's doing. And plus his head writer was like that white supremacist dude who would openly brag to his white supremacist forum buddies about how he was slipping secret messages into Tucker. Like, yeah. These people are fucking crazy, you know?
They absolutely are. Sorry, my brother was trying to call me. I'm stopping that.
Oh, do you live with family?
No, God, no. He was trying to call me. My brother is actually edits my videos now, though.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I mean, maybe it could be. I like my brother.
With this brother, it's good because we have a good rapport and relationship in that realm. There were times where we didn't get along well as we were younger, but I left the church first, then he left a few years later. I grew up Mormon, if you weren't aware, so we've got a good relationship now.
Gotcha. That's awesome that he had left as well. Are there any other family members of yours who left, or was it just you and your brother?
So I have 12 siblings, and of that, I left first, and then I have 2 brothers who left. I have 1 sister who's still in the church, but she's like really, really liberal. So my parents almost think of her as not in the church because that's not what they raised her with. But that's the extent of it. But I mean, I have two siblings with, they have, one of them's like low functioning autism. The other's mid functioning, neither of which can actually say they're a Mormon and have made that choice. Gotcha. So those 2 I wouldn't count as the leftover Mormons, but the rest are.
Gotcha. And your parents, of course, are still themselves.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Just curious. My branch of the family is small. It's just me and my parents and my brother who moved out to California a while ago, before I was born. And my parents were agnostic when I was birthed, so we didn't have that struggle when we were growing up.
Which, it doesn't surprise me that you haven't wanted to jump, like right now as I'm doing the atheist stuff, but still the political stuff, that you've been content enough over in the political sphere. Because I think being raised, especially in religious fundamentalism, is what makes a person on several days a week decide they want to listen to sermons to debunk. It doesn't surprise me.
I've had people in my audience who have said that I should that I should take a look at this religious content or that religious content and I should debunk it. Like, I don't fucking like, I don't. There was an overlap between my interests and religious content once. And there's this guy called Darth Dawkins. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's like
I'm aware.
Right, yeah, he's like a very, very conservative Christian debate bro. And
presuppositionalist.
Yeah. And there's a gigantic gap in his logic that's really obvious if you're even passingly familiar with it, in that he's comfortable presupposing the legitimacy of his sensory perception, but he won't grant atheists the ability to presuppose foundational sensory reliance. He won't do it for them, but he'll do it for himself. He'll say, I know that God has granted me this such and such because I've read the Bible. Well, how do you read the Bible with your eyes? Well, how do you know your eyes are telling you the truth? Well, I know that because God gave me these eyes, so I know he wouldn't lie to me. Well, fuck, then how do you know? Could be a demon. Whatever the case may be, very, very briefly, I thought that I was going to debate this guy, so I did some reading up on it, but then I listened to this guy debate a little bit more, and this guy's a fucking idiot. So I didn't think it was worth the time or energy, and since then I kind of fell off. And that was like a year and a half ago. That was a while ago. But that was the only time the interests really overlapped. And I guess it's probably for the better that way. I know I have a lot of spiritual people in my community. I recently made some flippant comments about mysticism, and I had somebody made a video response to me that I really need to get around to watching about paganism and like I haven't watched it, so I don't really know. But yeah, anyway,
it's funny because
variety there.
I have crossover audience with people that I just blatantly disagree with, and it tells you about some of the demographics with the audience that I have. But I also have a lot of Christian fans, but they're usually progressive Christians. They see me work with like Brenda from God is Gray. I haven't ever done a debunk video of her or anything, and I'm kind of staying away from doing anything that's going to turn into anything bigger for reasons. But Blair White and I have a lot of crossover audience, and we could not be more different. I know we have a lot of difference of opinions in a lot of areas. And then Kendall Ray, do you know who that is?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah, Blair has me blocked on Twitter. I would say that our differences in perspective are irreconcilable, perhaps. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, it's interesting because I am happy to be friends with people I disagree with, and even people that I feel are bigots, especially if it's bigoted toward like my queer identity, because it's just even myself, queer, but I'm a 6'2", 250-pound white male who passes for straight. Like, people aren't really fucking with me the way they fuck with other queer people.
Yeah, of course. Are you a gay as well?
I'm pansexual.
Oh, how wonderful. Me too.
Yeah. It's just, why limit yourself, you know? Why? I feel like, no, never mind. There's definitely going to be a lot of people, because we've both declared we're pansexual. The rules of the internet say now people are going to go make fan fictions that are illustrated. And the weirdest thing about that is you won't be able to tell which character is which.
Yeah, they save the digital artist sometime. They can just copy and fucking mirror flip the kissing thing. Yeah, no. I agree though, because I argue with a lot of Nazis, and you know, they're not the most polite sort. But they don't actually, by way of me being like a large kind of masked guy, they don't call me like a fag that often. Like, they go for like Jew or pedophile. Like, they go for a lot of other stuff. But I think that the idea of making fun of a guy for his sexuality is so intertwined with a feminine presentation that if they don't have that, it's like they don't even know what to do, you know?
I get soy boy more than I get some sort of queer epithet. Like, it's seriously, he seems like a soft. I get that I'm a cuck. I get that I'm a what's some of their other stupid incel words? A simp.
So, for example, these are ubiquitous. They'll call anyone a soy boy too, by the way. I've seen some unbelievably masculine people being called soy boy.
Yeah, which I'm sitting here like, So I moved recently, but the home before, I basically rebuilt myself. I do my own car repairs. Like, it's really funny where I'm like, I don't put a value on masculinity, but it's funny that so often my masculinity is being questioned by people that I'm positive I could beat up.
Oh yeah, like, no. Nothing gets me more. I love it because I do a lot of home renovations, because it's fun, and you know, if YouTube money's good. So I love, like, you know, I'm like pre-drilling stuff and like mounting whatever, or like cutting down this section of wall, and then I check my phone, like, okay, how's this latest video doing? I see somebody call me a soy boy, and I know it's a fucking 14-year-old with like 3 neck hairs, and I'm like, all right. Like, it's not even a thing. It doesn't bother me or anything, but it is legitimately funny. I've seen what these people look and act like. If they were comfortable in their masculinity, they wouldn't be online calling other people soy boys.
Right.
Yeah. So they go all over the place.
My friend was being attacked the other day. She was getting attacked by incels who were like trying to justify that there's that physical beauty has a genetic component, and it indicates whether or not a person's going to be more successful or something from a genetic. Anyway, they were trying to make her feel ugly and try and talk up how, like, basically almost like white supremacy, an almost type of beauty supremacy, was the thing they were advocating for. And you notice that their Twitter icon is the little default gray, like, and you're just like, I just know there's some ugly motherfucker on the other side of this trying to make this girl not feel pretty. Like,
and the funniest thing too, when white people try to argue that like Eurocentric beauty standards are objectively true. First of all, the concept of objective beauty is hilarious. Second of all, the 200-year period of imperialistic Orientalism was almost entirely oriented around wealthy European merchants and noblemen who were desperate to seize the exotic and divine beauty of the Eastern continents, which they had not yet traveled to or had women from. There was literally like an entire period of artistic development in Europe that was a byproduct of horny noblemen and merchants trying to get laid by like Indian, Thai, and Chinese women, you know, and Arab women as well. Like the whole, like hundreds of years. But whatever. What are you gonna do?
They're looking out at all this like, wow, look at all this beautiful stuff they create, the architecture, the clothes. I got this shitty birdhouse, just the basic pentagon shaped. It's just a funny visual.
Yeah, no, well, the poor European peasants had to stick with their Euro trad wives while all the wealthy dudes were out fucking someone in what would now be Iraq or something. Or Turkey, whatever the case may be. I'm sorry. Obviously, the actual history is like super complicated and nuanced, but that's a general, as I understand it, pretty accurate general recollection. I wanted to ask you, by the way, how far left do you consider yourself generally? Not when it comes to social issues. I imagine you and I would be pretty similar on that. When it comes to economic stuff, like I know obviously you're not a Trump supporter. Sure. Where do you want America to be, you know?
So I'm still figuring out where to put myself. For the moment, I still claim to be I'm in that right now zone of where some people call themselves a socialist, but that they like certain capitalistic type of incentives for people to perform or invent things, or people who say they're a capitalist who likes heavy amounts of socialistic balances.
Like a Nordic model kind of situation?
Say again?
Like a Nordic model kind of situation where you have a market economy, but it's very heavily constrained by government regulation?
Yes, plenty of regulation, plenty of balancing, but still incentives for people who outperform or are. My only skill is being apparently somehow interesting, and I like to have a high market value on that.
Well, we're biased, of course. We want to live in societies where people who are interesting have advanced social and economic opportunities, right? I mean, exactly. I would hope so.
My political priorities, though, right now is because we're living through and I know that people get mad when you make this comparison, but we're living through the next Hitler. And so when I think back to the people from the 40s, you know, you think about the people from the early 30s or the 20s before that, or in the 50s, and you go, okay, what were their specific political things? What did they fail to do? But as far as the early 40s, you're just like, are they anti-Hitler or not? Mm-hmm. And so my political priorities right now would be decimating fascism and removing what's currently in place for something that at least is going in the direction that I want. So I'm very passionately promoting that people vote for Biden in November. However, Biden wasn't. I'm trying to think if there was anybody who ran in the primary who I wouldn't have voted for over Biden. Ideologically, I wanted Bernie, and he's who I voted for initially. From a pragmatic standpoint, and I know the live chat's going to go off and say that this is wrong, but from a pragmatic standpoint, my initial support was actually for Warren, despite being more ideologically aligned with Bernie, because I felt that there was internally in the Democratic Party too much hostility and resistance to Bernie for his platform to actually be successful if he was president, and that Warren had a similar enough platform that would have actually been more things passed for her being the president than him, which I feel a little vindicated by, because I was saying that months before Biden then became the nominee, and then you go and watch the DNC actually pull some stuff and show the hostility and resistance they have to him to get united all at once to take Bernie out of the running. So I think that actually played out, that I was right about it. But anyway,
you weren't incorrect in your prediction for how chat would react. I understand your logic. Yeah. I was more of a Delaniac myself. Bernie was a second for me. I'm not happy with Biden. So I take it you don't have a particularly high opinion of the Democrat Party.
I wouldn't say I don't have as much bitterness as I know, but I'm also just not that kind of person. I also don't have like a lot of bitterness toward fundamentally religious people, despite the fact that I'm often fighting against them. So I don't have the same bitterness I have toward the right. I definitely, especially when you're talking about a relative political spectrum to American politics, I do push back against people who try to say things like Biden is the same as Trump. There's no difference between them, or that Biden is just as right wing, or that Biden's a Republican. I do push back against that kind of stuff. I'm not impressed with, like, the Democratic Party will figure out a way to fuck up anything, no matter like how much people are really interested in them succeeding. They'll figure out a way to fail anyway. And we play by a completely different set of rules than the right. When you just look at how much of a fucking king Trump has acted over the last 4 years, and then you remember that word kept being used for Obama, and the level to which they are able to move what the political direction of this country is, and we couldn't even pass a public fucking option because we were too worried about that one Democrat who was like, I think this might be an abortion thing too. So yeah, I'm not impressed with.
You would agree that Trump is king shit then?
Yes, I think Trump is a threat to democracy and the single worst president in the history of our country.
So I don't know the metrics by which one would say a president's the worst. I know, of course, Trump's a terrible president. I haven't done my utilitarian calculus on that one yet. Can I introduce an argument to you?
Sure.
There are a lot of people, myself included, who are of the opinion that the Democrat Party is institutionally incapable of preventing our decline into fascism over time, as evidenced by their weakness during this primary season, as evidenced by the Democrats' seeming willingness to gang up and attack on Bernie with more vigor than they ever do Trump. It seems they're more interested in protecting the tax margins of their donors than they are actually winning against Trump. And that this pattern we're facing right now is just the beginning, or maybe even the middle, of what's going to be a perpetual slide further and further down, and that we're going to need to do something very drastic to break ourselves from that cycle. I assume that's an argument you've heard before. Usually it's made by people who also don't advocate for voting for Biden, which I very much do. I think that's a very stupid addition to the previous argument, but I defend that portion of it, you know?
Yeah. So when it comes to basically a political revolution ahead, I'm for it, especially a nonviolent political revolution, which I know also there will be people in the audience that are like, well, that's still bullshit. But when it comes to when I vote, my humanism comes before my political affiliation. And my humanism obviously is also tied in with my political affiliation. But the fact of the matter is, even if you just take out what a fascist Trump is, and you just go with political policies, an expansion to universal health care, the maintaining of abortion rights, the hopefully restructuring of the Supreme Court. If I'm kind of pro, let's bully Kavanaugh into quitting if Biden wins, but I don't know if that's possible.
Oh, if only.
God, wouldn't it just be the best? Like, I'm so anti-cancel culture and cyberbullying, but I'd make an exception. That's probably a joke, but I'm not sure. But there are specific issues where it's like, I understand we're not going to have Medicare for all. We might get a public option, but we're not going to have Medicare for all, which is something that I think at this point you can make the argument that anybody who doesn't advocate for Medicare for all, that is an immoral position to not advocate for it. We're not going to have police reform in the way that we want to see, just going with current day social issues. However, if you're tracking a percentage bar of how close we're getting to ideal policies, with Biden we creep up further, with Trump we fall away.
Oh no, I don't disagree with that at all. I think what a lot of people are concerned about is we're going to see the same, because so in the 2020 Democratic primaries, the main reason people voted for Biden was electability. Now, electability is kind of like a self-perpetuating, prophecy, or like a self-fulfilling prophecy, where like electability means nothing until people think it does, and then it means everything. And a lot of people who voted for Biden, it seems at least, were more preferable towards Bernie's policies. And that's the concern that I have right now. It seems like one of the biggest obstacles we have to moving left in this country is people recognize that far left candidates like Bernie, or at least far left by American standards, are more vulnerable in the general election than people like Biden. So they'll capitulate. They'll vote for Biden, even though they kind of sort of want a Bernie type. And then Biden will either win or lose, depending on how competent the DNC is feeling that day. And then the next election happens, and we get kind of the same issue. Obama had 8 years, and we got not very much from him. It feels like we need more radical solutions. What I'm essentially asking you is, can I red pill you on the electoral component of pushing for socialism? Is that possible?
What I would like, if it's possible, I'm not willing to agree to adopt the label until Sargon has floated a conspiracy that we're having sex, and that's why I've changed my mind.
First Sargon has been very interested in my junk lately. I would not make that bet because he is that could be happening right now as it's happening.
I'm aware, and unless I'm mistaken, he's been spreading a similar conspiracy about the next person you have on tonight.
Yeah. Poor Shoe on head, dude. I like DM Shoe every once in a while, asking like a question or like, "Hey, how you doing?" Whatever. And now we're a prom king and queen. But I don't know. Sargon's just super duper interested in what I'm doing with my cock. Is he pan? Is that he gonna be the next bearded skeptic?
Well, wouldn't that be interesting?
Yeah.
So oftentimes I'll make the joke that whenever you're in a space where two people introduce themselves and it comes out that they're both pansexual, everybody in the room usually does this like look between them kind of thing. And the joke I would make in response to that is, guys, stop assuming that just because we're both pansexual, we're going to have sex just because that happens 100% of the time. If Sargon revealed himself to be pansexual, I would stop making that joke. I would never make the joke ever again.
Well, it's tacky then, you know? It's even if it's inevitable, you know? Like it's like you're going out with like a pretty lady and you're at a nice restaurant and you look at her and you're like, you're going to take a giant shit later. It's true. I mean, it has to happen.
But it doesn't have to be on your chest, but I think Sargon would insist on it.
Maybe. Probably. So that's the 50-50 on the red pilling then? I've been having a fun time online lately. I get a lot of hate from the right and from the left because there are a lot of people on the left who pursue an agenda that I think is actively contradictory to our interests. They push for it in a way that would only end us getting hurt or would actively lessen our chances of getting anything done. And then, of course, the right just wants to kill all of us. So we've got that problem, you know, at the same time.
I'm definitely way open to having more conversation stuff online or offline. I'm already in a place that is constantly moving left, but because my political stuff, which is funny because at some point I may even be interested in running for office one day, but my political stuff takes a backseat to a lot of the social and humanitarian stuff. So the political considerations seem to be in a constantly drifting further left state. I might already be there. It just has to take me sort of having a gentle drift there to take on any label. It's kind of like when you look at some of the new people in Congress, where it's like they're still in the Democratic Party, but obviously their views have, dare we say, ascended the Democratic Party.
Oh, that's my dream. I mean, because I think that's the next step, really. Bernie Sanders was an independent his entire career. He runs as a Democrat for president once and goes from completely unknown as a senator. Right. Like he's known in Vermont, sure, but apart from that, not known on a national stage, to single-handedly shifting the entire political discourse of the Democratic Party like a mile left. In an instant, we went from Democrats praising Obamacare as the best he could do, a Heritage Foundation plan, to people talking about the decommodification of healthcare. Like, just an unbelievable leap left. And I think that's in large part because a lot of Democrats are really amicable to the ideas of more socialist-leaning people, and it's just a matter of introducing it to them in an electorally viable context, and not just as like mohawk sporting leather biker jacket wearing anarchists handing out pamphlets somewhere on Main Street. We need to work a little bit within the system to bring people around.
Right. Yeah, I agree. There's also, I have some hope for something like that in the future. It may be dependent on what type of package you put it into, because despite the fact that Obama was ideologically obviously right of Bernie Sanders, because he was the first black president, he was running on universal healthcare and stuff. The civilian perception of him was, I think, it was a more radical idea to think we could end up with Obama at that time, as it now would have been perceived as radical to end up with Bernie this time.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, that's one of the great treacheries of the Obama administration, though, wasn't it? We got a very, I don't mean to say superficial in the sense that it didn't matter, but superficial in the sense that it didn't have an immediate impact in the political landscape. A very superficial victory with Obama being the first black president, and then you ride that sort of progressive notion to get a moderate president for 8 years. Moderate being perhaps charitable with some of the other shit he has done.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but then you have somebody like Bernie Sanders, and people are like, "Oh, Bernie Sanders, an old white man." Well, fuck, dude's it's just socialist. Like, okay, sure, id pull aside. Like, yeah, I get it. Black president's cool, not denying that. But my God, you can't praise the radical skin color of Obama and then besmirch the moderate socialism of Bernie Sanders. It's such a wild set of priorities. But yeah, people have priorities all over the place,
Bernie was special to me, though, because like I mentioned, being from New York, I had already met a million Brooklyn Jews, and he was just the perfect Brooklyn Jew. There's just something about the way he delivers and the way he talks, and having seen that and grown up around it a bunch when I was younger, and then in a political package where I was just like, first of all, I would have loved to have seen him and Donald debate. Neither of them would ever pronounce the letter H at the beginning of any of their words the whole debate. And that would have been fun just to keep track of. It's going to be huge for the humans in the Heritage Foundation. It's going to be, that would have been
Heritage
excellent.
Foundation. Yeah, no.
Okay, it's going to be huge. And when we talk about our heritage, we're just going to, yeah.
Oh, whoa, you got him from both ends. Not just one good impression, but two. Nice.
I appreciate it. I realize now I've missed the opportunity to make the debate I want. I could make it.
Yeah, you could, absolutely. Or you could do one of those cringy YouTube rap battles, Or you have two people and they dress up. Or you could just do both parts,
That's it.
What are you gonna do? Oh my God, it's been an hour. Holy fuck. Okay, speak a little faster then. What do you plan on doing if Trump wins again? Do you have a plan for your channel, for your content, any priorities?
So we all make the joke that feels somewhat real that I'm moving to Canada. And I've said that a few times. However, the lease I just signed on this apartment still has like 13 months on it. So I wouldn't be moving immediately. It's a good question, because the question is, if Trump wins, are we done for decades at having any chance at meaningful progress? Because Trump wins means a sixth conservative on the Supreme Court. So you're talking about reversal of major social decisions.
You don't think
in the
Ruth
past.
Bader Ginsburg can survive another 4 years?
I'm not positive she makes it to November.
They're gonna hook her up to the golden fucking throne, like the Emperor from 40K. She's just gonna be a skeleton on top of a golden seat of power.
It'll start a bad cycle too, because if Trump wins and Ruth Bader Ginsburg is replaced by him, whenever the Democrats then take power back, which presumably would eventually happen, it means our only choice is to add more to the Supreme Court, which is going to start a never-ending cycle of fuckery of each party doing that. So from then on, it will always be whoever wins, whoever is in power will also have the Supreme Court, because we're going to add people to it. And so running for the presidency will always be running for the Supreme Court. Whereas right now, we're not even running to win the Supreme Court back. We're just winning to keep Roberts as our best hope, which if people knew more about Roberts' history, like that's a shit dream. So yeah, it's, I think if Trump wins, we are decades away from significant progress again. And at a certain point, you just have to look at what can be maintained at a state level, which is funny because being so left wing and then talking about like, then I got to care about my state rights, and see if you want to stick around for it, or do you relocate to, which is not a commodity everybody has. Do you relocate to somewhere like Canada?
Yeah, it's a pride thing for me. I already get a lot of death threats from angry Nazis and Trumples online because I engage with these communities pretty directly. Probably the safest thing I could do if Trump won again, because that would be 4 more years of hyper-empowered far-right action. I mean, we're at the tail end of one Trump presidency, and we're getting like 1 far-right murder a week. This week we're on what, 3? I don't even. It's ramping up. I mean, and it's only going to ramp up more from here. There are hundreds of millions of people to kill. You know, not going to stop it once a week. What I'd really like to see, and this is if Trump loses, you know, this is if Biden wins, is the complete political irrelevance of the Republican Party. And the obnoxious thing is, this is capable of being done. If we get the Senate, the House, and the presidency, this can be done. The Democrat Party has millions more registered members than the Republican Party, and we know from numerous types of demographic research that the people who are not registered Democrat or Republican, who are of voting age, are more left-leaning than they are right-leaning. There is a bias there, because a lot of these people are just very poor or very apathetic, but they're working class, and many of them are people of color, and these groups tend to sway left. And if we handled ourselves policy-wise, i.e., getting rid of the Electoral College, implementing just some very basic anti-gerrymandering legislation and the WatchGuard group, just for some of the obvious cases, you know? And probably also implementing ranked choice voting. If we just simple stuff like that, we could make the Republicans incapable of winning the presidency. That's insane.
They're currently incapable of winning on fair terms anyway. Without gerrymandering, without the Electoral College, they're incapable of winning. And I think some of us got, and I probably was in that camp, in 2016, I think we already thought we had kind of gotten there and we don't even have to worry about. Don't get me wrong, I still went out and voted, but I think a lot of people didn't because there were so many people who, on top of many other factors, one of the factors was people who didn't vote because they were like, Hillary's going to win this thing, and so why go vote? And when you think about how small the margins were, that it could have been a difference of only 17,000 people that actually made Trump the president, it has to be an extremely small percentage of people to just accept, obviously, Hillary's going to win, to not go vote, and he's won. There's other things as well, and some of that includes our own democratic cannibalizing.
For sure. There are elements of the left, of socialist, communist, anarchists, who are of the opinion that like attacking the Republican Party as a distinct political entity is kind of cringe and liberal, because the Democrats, the Republicans are the same side of capital. And while they undeniably both serve the interests of capitalists, I think we can essentially agree at this point that Republicans are death cultists. The RNC has been a nonstop cavalcade of outright criminals, just lying factually incorrect statements, point by point. That one woman who spoke on RNC convention day 1 was the person whose current boyfriend is Trump Jr., previous boyfriend was a neo-Nazi.
Dude.
Just railed
You're talking
off.
about Guilfoyle, right?
Just railed off a fascist speech. Just point by point. It could have been right out of Nazi Germany. There were no differences. You swap America for Germany or the fatherland, and it would have been. It fits perfectly. And at this point, I think we have to recognize that while Democrats and Republicans both serve capital, and they unquestionably do, Republicans serve something else, which is a fastidious devotion to anti-humanism, and that their political irrelevance is a necessary part of making this country even halfway functional in the future.
Two things. One, I hope you saw my tweet, which was a petition to get Kimberly Guilfoyle to change her name to Mussolini. And then two,
she was fucking crazy, dude. Holy shit.
That was the most bizarre fucking thing I saw all night. I think like I was live tweeting the RNC, and I think 3 or 4 of my tweets were like, what the fuck is happening? And it was pre-recorded. That's the other thing. Somebody finished recording it and went, that's the one.
Yeah, they were happy with that. Yeah, they were like, yep, that'll get the base stirred up. And the second day, there was a woman they didn't bring because she, just before the convention, had tweeted out support for the Jewish question. Like she had tweeted out something about the Jews trying to enslave the Goyim or something like that. Like, this is the party. This isn't just the followers, because the followers of the party are less controlled than the party itself.
The Republicans, if Republicans actually advocated for what they claim they advocate for, though I would still disagree with them, I would find them much more tolerable. If they were actually the party of personal freedoms or freedoms of any kind in general, if they were a party of fiscal responsibility, stronger state rights, and weaker federal government in favor of a stronger state government, if those are the things they advocated for, I would still disagree with many of their positions. But I could coexist and it'd be fine. But it's not. They are the furthest from being, and they're always the one who were like, you just don't understand freedom. Bitch, you don't understand freedom. Are you kidding me? They want to restrict everything.
The best, the ideal Republican Party, I think, is Jorgensen?
Jorgensen,
yeah. The libertarian presidential candidate. I think she's, because if you only follow what Republicans say they are not racist, sexist, or anything of the sort. They're very heavy on promoting personal responsibility and business rights. And I think that if that was what they were, then they would probably be a progressive libertarian party. But they are not a progressive libertarian party. So there's it's pretty fucking stupid.
Because you brought up Joe, though, the one thing I want to say is the number of people who think just because I'm not satisfied with Biden that I would vote for anybody else besides Biden or Trump. There are so many people who've come to me like, hey, I know Biden wasn't your choice. I know you liked Bernie and Warren. I know you blah, 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 blah. And then they were like, so Joe Jorgensen, I would rather have Biden than Joe Jorgensen as president. I'd just like to clear that up for anybody because, again, way more respectable and intellectually consistent than Trump, but I am not a libertarian. And so, Christ.
I think a lot of people don't understand how destructive libertarian economic policies would actually be. Not just to like poor people, but also like just from an id poll perspective. If you're Joe and you're like Black Lives Matter, fuck racism, but then you're not willing to invest in any kind of government project that systemically addresses the reasons why black people kind of get shafted, then you're only really doing half of the, then it's virtue signaling of the highest order. It would be like, it's really no different than saying, fuck Nazism in 1939 and then not declaring war. Like, it's fantastic, it's great, okay, cool. Fuck Nazism, I agree. You have to do a little more than that, though, for it to really count.
Speaking of virtue signaling, my dad was we were messaging each other, and I brought up, I was like, if this hurricane's as bad as it could be, this could be the thing that decides whether or not Trump wins re-election. And he said, yes, but the left on the media will spin it as if they find one person who's not doing well, then it'll be that Trump failed. And I said, and I'm here for it because Trump is, first he said, so you're saying meet dishonesty with more dishonesty, referring to Trump and how dishonest he is, as dishonest. And my response it was something about like, no, not dishonesty, just holding Trump to the standard of Trump will say this was the greatest hurricane recovery that has ever happened ever under anyone's watch, period. And so we just say, we're going to hold you to that exact standard. But then I was like, wait a second, you're voting for Trump and you want to lecture me? You're going to virtue signal to me about being honest? Are you fucking kidding me right now?
I mean, keep in mind, the first thing Trump did after he won was say he had the largest inauguration crowd in history, and then said 3 million illegals voted for Hillary. And then he spent government money on a task force to determine whether a random fucking lie he just made up out of nowhere, probably in preparation for what he thought would be a loss, was true, which it wasn't. And no Trump supporter has ever cared. They have never cared. They have never given a fuck about any of that. They live in it's a different reality. It's not just we disagree on values. We don't even share a common view of how the world functions. It's insane. It's an unbridgeable gap in the short term, unfortunately. Only making them politically irrelevant will help us seal the gap with better education and better, news outreach and such.
My dad is politically closer to Romney than he is Trump, and he recognizes that Trump is a nightmare of a human. But basically, the reason why he's going, even though he voted, first of all, my dad's in Wyoming. His party, there is no chance that Trump won't win Wyoming. So he doesn't have to vote for Trump. He could vote third party just to say, I recognize he's a piece of shit, so I'm going to make this symbolic gesture. But he's going to essentially vote for Trump because of what I could summarize as he's afraid of AOC. Because there is this new paranoia that anytime Democrats win, AOC specifically is in the background controlling everything.
They're terrified of her. Yeah, for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
It's which is funny. It's one of the reasons AOC is incredibly popular of a politician, but she actually has a very mixed favorability rating because most Republicans, when they're asked about a given Democratic congressperson, don't know who they are. So they won't respond. They'll just say, I don't know. But with AOC, every Republican has heard about AOC. The Republicans talk about AOC more than the Democrats do. Right. So they all know. We're actually running really, really close to the beginning of the RNC convention. I have to get ready for that.
No worries. I'm going to go watch it myself.
Gotcha. Oh, cool. Hey, Mr. Snow, thank you very, very much for coming on. I really appreciate that, man.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. We'll have to do something again, maybe over on my outlets at some point too.
Yes, and I am normally not streaming on D Live. This is normally not the outlet that I have chosen. The RNC is just a bit of a copyright landmine, or minefield. Thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciated it. And I assume most of the people here know who you are, but would you like to shout out any socials?
I'm Jimmy Snow. I have a channel where I teach people how to make out of paper mache turtle rectums. That's the whole channel. 7 million subscribers so far. You can become one.
Have a wonderful day, Mr. Paper Mache Turtle Rectum Jimmy Snowmaker.
Thank you. Yeah.
I didn't know how that'd go, but he ended up being super cool and easy to talk to. Fuck yeah. Love me that shit.